it should appear like we hate our family. Now, can you imagine God ever telling us to hate our family? He didn't say that. That's not what the scripture says. It said it should appear like your love for God should be such a higher plane than even the love for your wife or your children. It's not that you don't love them, but they are not on the same level with God. If they are, then you're not loving Him with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your strength. I guarantee you, your wives, your husbands, your children are not going to suffer when you love the Lord your God with everything that you are. They're going to be the beneficiaries of that. Because that love is going to trickle down and God is going to bless that. God said, in order to be ready to parent, I need you to love me with your entire soul. Poor preparation results in laziness, and we begin to get lazy. And I want to tell you something, parents and families, your kids are watching you. If you're going to be a lazy leader, they're going to be lazy followers. It's just the way it is. I have a 4-year-old grandson that mimics everything that I do. It doesn't matter what I do. I can say the most pleasant word in the world and he'll say it, or I can say the most hideous word in the world and he'll say it. He's not the one that's supposed to be judging which one is right or wrong. I am. I'm the one that's supposed to be setting the example. I'm the one that's supposed to be leading the way. But sometimes we lay around the house because we're too tired from everything else that we put in front of God that we can't even serve God anymore. We have to be first fruit Christians. That means in our giving, in our serving. Listen, I want my wife and children to have the best of who I am. I don't want them to get the leftovers at the end of my day. I don't want to come home and just flop and fall because I'm exhausted from doing everything else. Listen, my values are as follow. God first, family second, church is third. But it all works together when you put God first, because family and church are always going to be in that process. God's not going to leave that out, because it was God who said, do not forsake the assembling of yourself together, as many are in the custom of doing. We don't need much of a reason to miss church for some of the kind of event anymore. I got people all the time in my church that'll go to an Indians game, a Colts game, or anything else if they get free tickets, even if it's on a church night. And my kids will tell you that since they've been born, they've never missed church for anything, unless we're on vacation. They stopped asking after a while, and their friends stopped asking them to do things on church nights and church days because they knew that the answer was no. We have got to make sure we're first fruit Christians. If we want strong relationships, and we want strong marriages, and we want strong families, and we want strong communities, and I know you guys want all those things, we have to make sure we are first fruit Christians. That we're giving God the first of our money, not the last of our money. Not what's left over, not what we can give Him now that we paid everything else. Listen, He paid it all to begin with. He wants you to be first fruit so that He can bless you. He wants your service to be first fruit Christianity. He wants you to be thinking first, what can I do for my church? What can I do for my community, rather than what can my church and community do for me? Give it to Him first. He'll take care of the rest. Listen, you make a deal with God. Here's the deal. When you make a deal with God, He wants you to give first. There's a reason for that. There's a reason He wants you to give first, because this is what He knows. If He gives to you first, there's no guarantee He gets a return. But if you give to Him first, it's a guarantee you get a return. You understand what I'm saying? First fruit. Giving it to God. You want to know that the worst part of all, our kids are watching us in everything we do. If we have half-hearted love for God, they'll have a half-hearted love affair with God. They see you selling out to God, they'll sell out to God. Oh yeah, they might rebel, they might go their own way. Listen, my mom taught me the Word of God, and I rebelled. But you know what? When it was time for me to come back to the Lord, I didn't need a preacher to teach me over and over again all the stuff that I learned. It all came back to me because my mother trained up her child in the way that he should go. The Bible says, we'll see that a little bit later, that they'll return to that. They see us selling out, they'll sell out. If they see us as a sellout, they'll be a sellout. And so we need to raise our kids in strength and in purity and in love and giving everything that we have. See, it's poor preparation that leads this kind of inheritance to our kids. You're going to leave an inheritance to your children. That's it. It might be a poor one or it might be a great one. You're leaving something. We influence our kids and our families whether we like it or not. It may not be the best influence, but you are going to influence your children. You're going to influence your spouses. So how do we prepare? How do we make sure that we're prepared to be the right kind of men, the right kind of women, the right kind of parents, the right kind of church, the right kind of community leaders? What do we do to prepare? And some of you are thinking, well, my kids are older now, and I know I made some mistakes. But what do I do now to kind of turn it around? Listen, my kids are 22 and 25. They may need me more as an example now that they're facing life themselves than they did when they were children. How many would agree that life is hard? Life is hard, right? So maybe they need to see their daddy now, standing strong and remaining with his promises, to say that my yes is yes and my no is no. And if I make a promise to my kids, I'm going to keep that promise. Maybe they need to see me as an example now more than they needed me as little children when they were watching every move I make, because now they're living life. Now they're having to face financial strain. Now they're having to face the workplace. Now they're having to face service for the Lord. They're doing all these things now that they've been taught to do, but maybe they still need their daddy to show them, this is how you do it. You can come to me. We can talk about this. So we need to be prepared. So how do we prepare? What do we do? Look at verse 7 and 9 again. 7 through 9. It says this, impress them on your children. What are we talking about? Impress the things of God on your children. Impress it on them. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on the gates. How do we do it? We impress it upon people. I want people to not be impressed by me. I want to impress on them who I am. I want them to know that I'm a born-again believer in Jesus Christ, that I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I believe in the ways of God. And if you know anything else about me, I really don't care, but I want you to know that I love God with all my heart. Impress means to leave a lasting mark, a reminder. When you leave a place, people are reminded. When you hear my name again, not because of fame or glory or anything else, but you'll remember that's the guy who loves Jesus. If you remember that I work with the poor or help people under bridges or whatever that might be, all that, working with the kids and working with prostitutes on the streets, all those things that we do, all that, if you remember all that and you miss the fact that the only reason I do that is because of my love for Jesus Christ, you don't know my story. My story comes because Jesus Christ is the lover of my soul. What do we need to impress according to these scriptures? To love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Men, I'm talking about how you talk to your wives. Wives, I'm talking about how you support and talk to your husbands. I'm talking about how we relate to our children and our friends and our relatives and our co-workers. We need to impress on them that we love God with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our strength. And our actions reflect that. We can't say we do all that. We can't say we have those things going on and then go out there and live however we want to live. And do whatever the world says is okay. The Bible says do not follow the customs of this world, but be separated in purity and in love. Here's some other things God says to do with our kids in particular. He says, talk about it at home. You talk about God at home? Is he a part of your conversation? I guarantee you when I talk to my mother today, we're going to talk about God. I can do everything I can to keep God out of the equation. I cannot bring it up one time. I guarantee you today, there is no possibility. It is absolutely impossible that I will not be talking about God with my mother today. Unless he takes one of us home to be with him before I get there. We're going to talk about God. We're going to talk about God at the table. We're going to talk about God when we sit down in the living room. We're going to talk about God when we reminisce. We talk about our neighborhood, the little town we grew up in. We're going to talk about God inside and outside, wherever we are. And listen, it's not always God this and God that and Jesus this and Jesus that, but the very essence of who she is a picture of Christianity. So everything that she is God. In the morning, we talk about it. It says to put them as symbols on our hands, to bind them on our foreheads. Why? So that every time your child sees you or your spouse sees you, every time they see you or wave to you, they're seeing a symbol of who you are. That you're a follower of Jesus Christ. That you're a prayer warrior. That you're a person of the Word. It's a reminder that you love God with all of your heart, your soul, and your strength. Verse 9 says, write them on the door frames of your house and on the gates. We sang about it today. Both sides. Why? So that whether they are coming or they are going in and out of your house that God has given you, they will know, as for me and my house, say it with me, we will serve the Lord. You kids need to know that going out, because they're going out maybe to rebel. They're going out to do something they shouldn't do. And they're going to see that, as for me and my house, will serve the Lord. And when they come back and they have all that guilt from the sin that they just committed, they will know that when they go back in, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. God gives us ways to lead our families, to lead our relationships. See, when we're not prepared, we're confusing to our families. I can't tell my wife I love her and then go out and flirt with another woman. I have never, in the last 27 years since the day we got married, been alone with another woman. I've been invited to lunch. I've been invited to do this and that. I have women that come in and need counseling. I've never counseled a woman by myself behind closed doors, ever. I've never been alone with another woman in any kind of atmosphere that would be just me and that woman for 27 years. Why? Because you know what? That'd be confusing to my wife. Why would you jeopardize our relationship by doing this? That's my own personal conviction. I learned that from a man named Billy Graham. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him, but he's kind of a small-time preacher, but he's taught us a lot with integrity and how we're supposed to act. See, when you're not prepared, it becomes confusing to your children when you say one thing and do another. You know that saying, do as I say, not as I do? That's not in the Bible. I don't know who came up with that. That's the worst advice. Do as I say, not as I do. We're to be examples. We're to lead. We're to show them. Yes, we're to tell them. But we're to also show them. Doing whatever we want is an irresponsibility. It's something that comes with a lack of preparation. We're saying, well, we need you to do it. I had someone tell me last night, I love my mom. And she never went to church, but she made sure all the kids did. You know, well, I guess we can thank her for the part of it. But how much more powerful would that mother have been had she taken her kids to church, been at church with her kids, led her church into a relationship, or led her children into a relationship with God at church? See, the Bible says, train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. It doesn't mean they're not going to rebel. It never says that. It says to train them up in the way that they should go. And if we don't know the ways of God, if we don't know how He wants us to be in relationship, if we don't know how He wants us to parent, how can we train them up in the way they should go? We've got to be students of the world. Your child deserves and needs you to be in control. We got too many parents letting the 3-year-old behind the wheel. No, God put us in control. There'll be a time when that child is qualified and ready to be behind the wheel, but they need until that time for you to be in control. For you to decide which direction the family's going. So God, He knew we couldn't be Him. So He did the next best thing. He made us in His image. What a privilege it is to have the title of mommy or daddy. Is one far too few parents embrace as a privilege and an honor. During a time of reflection, a single mother wrote this of her daughter. She wrote this, "She is filled with my blood. She stands on my bones. Her eyes are moist with dew. She looks like me. She is my ticket into the next generation, my spaceship into the land of the young. She is my chance to give support, strength, and solidarity to a part of my destiny. She offers me my own opportunity to be all that I wanted someone else to be to me. Helping her is healing me. To love her is to love me. The process of saving her from making mistakes somehow gives purpose to my deepest pains. I will endure whatever it takes to help her reach a star. She is like warm clay, waiting to be shaped into a woman. She is myself, my friend, my comrade. She is my daughter. She is all I invest in her today for the challenges of tomorrow. God grant me grace for motherhood and wisdom for parenting. For without the guidance of God helping me and training me, I cannot raise my child in the way that I should. Without God guiding and helping me, I cannot be the wife that I need to be. Without God training me and helping me, I cannot be a part of the family that He needs us to be." Pastor, what time do you guys end?
Oh, anytime.
Anytime now? All right, who'll give me 5 more minutes? Raise your hand if I can have 5 more minutes. 5, 10, 15, 20. Okay, we got plenty of time. I want to close it with this. This writer understands 3 things. From the moment of birth, this child was flesh of her flesh and bone of her bone. We can't take that for granted. Flesh of her flesh and bone of her bone. The second thing is that she realized that there was a lot of mistakes that could be avoided. That's what leading's about. I don't want my kids to fall in the same holes I fell in. I want to lead them around those places. She understood that she would have to guide and direct. The third thing was this. She acknowledges and says that without God's help, raising her kids properly, being a godly woman, being a wife, is absolutely impossible. Listen, we are to inspire one another. through the love of God. I remember several years ago, about 4 years ago, I was battling depression. I didn't even know what depression was. I never tasted depression in my life. As a matter of fact, when people would come to my office, pastor, and say, I'm struggling with depression, I would tell them all the spiritual things they would need to hear, from a pastor, and I'd read them a couple of scriptures. In the back of my mind, I was saying, get over it. Until it touched me. And I remember it was Thanksgiving, and we had just bought a car, and we had it for about a week, and we lived down in the hood, and I was still battling with this depression. And it was Thanksgiving morning. We were going to go get in the car and go to Kathy's parents for Thanksgiving, and I walked outside, and my car was gone. And I thought, well, as you get older, sometimes you forget where you parked your car, so I thought maybe I parked it around back, so ran around back, wasn't there. I came back in, and that depression was just so heavy. That was just like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I remember this. I remember vividly because my whole life, I've been Superman to my kids. They think I can fix anything. They think I can do anything. And I like that. I like being there for my family. And I was always this strong person that if anything got in my way, you get out of the way or I'm going over you. That's just the way I always kind of lived my life and did things. But that day, it was just too heavy. And I just began to tear up and cry. Then I felt my knees get weak and just buckle. And I looked over in the corner and I saw these two young women. They would have been about 20 and 17. Holding each other, crying. Because for the first time, they saw their daddy weak. Now here's the beautiful part of this story, moms, mothers and wives. I want you to hear this. I always protected my wife from everything as well. I didn't want her to have to face the heaviness of finances or things that were going on. I always kept her from it because I thought she wasn't strong enough to deal with it. I was wrong. On that day, as I was sinking, my wife grabbed my face, lifted me up, looked me in the eyes, and she said, simple words, we are going to make it with the help of God. I want to tell you something. She became the wind beneath my wings that day. And she is the greatest mother I know. And because God has equipped all of us to lead, when I was weak, he gave me a helpmate. Her name's Kathy, too. And that helpmate lifted me up. And the depression began to break. And now things that were coming at me that I didn't think I could ever handle, I could handle with ease because now I have not just the woman of my dreams with me, but now a strong woman. And I've learned since that day all of her new strengths that I kept hidden. I kept under wraps because I didn't want her to have to deal with it. We are better today because she's been equipped by God himself as a helpmate to lift me up. She did that for me. So mothers, women, I applaud you today. Pastor, I applaud you and your wife for leading this church in this series. It's an extremely important series. Don't miss one episode. God bless you. Thanks for having me.